So here are three things you need to know before you buy commercial property at an auction. I'll cover residential in another video. Residential is a little bit easier, but auctions for commercial properties can actually get you into a lot of trouble if you don't know what you're doing. So number one, you want to make sure that you've established what the value of that property is. What is the highest price you're willing to pay? Remember, auctions are high pressure situations. That is what sellers love, because the seller's property is basically the blue-eyed blonde and the buyers are all lining up to see who can score a date with her, right? So it causes, what does it cause? It causes heightened emotions, it causes competitiveness, and inevitably it causes people overpaying for properties. Remember, when you get to the banks all have a rule. They fund the lower of cost or value. So if you overpay for that property, it means you will have to fork out the difference, right? You will have to take that difference out because you've gone and overpaid for that property. Which leads us into point number two. Make sure you have all the money that is needed to cover all the costs that come along with buying at an auction. And the costs, they start from the auction floor all the way to the deeds office. From the auction floor, you need to pay the auctioneer's commission. You need to pay your 10% deposit. If it's a sheriff's auction, you also need to pay outstanding rates or outstanding levies. Then when you get to the bank is definitely going to ask you for a higher deposit. Remember, banks don't give 100% finance on commercial. So you will likely have to have like a 30 to 30, anywhere from a 30% to a 50% deposit available, right? Where you're going to top up on that 10% you've already paid. Then banks also charge admin or raising fees, which is a certain percentage of the loan amount. There's valuation fees, which you're also going to have to cover. If you've bought well at the auction, then maybe they can load some of those fees onto the loan amount, right? Then you're going to get to the lawyers. The lawyers are going to want you to pay the transfer duty. If transfer duty is applicable, you need to cover the legal costs for the lawyer to register, to transfer the property to your name. The bond costs on behalf of the bank for registering the bond. You need to be able to cover all those costs. And when it comes to costs, it helps if you have an unbonded property available, because what you could then possibly do is you could go to a bridging finance company and ask them to refinance that property for 3 to 6 months. And let's say you raise 2 million rand on that property, they normally give you about 50%, and you can take that money, basically have it available when you get to the auction, so you can execute on your deposit and all these other costs that I've just mentioned. And then when you refinance the property later on with the bank, you can then always repay the bridging finance, right? That's a bit more of a structured thing that you need to do, but it does help when you have some unbonded property somewhere that you can leverage, but you got to do that well in advance, right? And the bridging companies work very, very fast, so they can give you the finance really quickly if you do have an unbonded property. If you're going to be bringing investors in to cover some of those costs, speak to them up front so that they are aware that this is the deal, this is what we're going to have to pay, so they can tell you whether they have the money available. So when you go to that auction, you know you have all the money to cover those costs. And then point number three, make sure you know exactly who you're going to be speaking to when it's time to apply for the finance. Yesterday I had someone reach out to me. They bought a property on auction. Now they're running around trying to find someone to help them raise the finance. And remember, auction contracts are very often non-negotiable, right? And those deposits are non-refundable. So if you run out of time, you're going to get into a lot of trouble. So you want to know exactly who you're speaking to, whether you're dealing directly with a banker or maybe it's a commercial property broker. Ask them up front what information is going to be required. Collect that information up front so you have it available. So if you win the bid at the auction, you can easily send it to them and very quickly send it to them, so that you're not spending another 1 to 2 weeks just collecting information. All that must be ready by the time you're applying for that finance.